The following video is based on true events. Viewer discretion is advised. There is a group of cold case investigators who meet biannually in Saskatchewan. The Saskatchewan Association of Cold Case Investigators share information and knowledge between agencies. This video is a result of their collaboration. These are some of their cases. On November 14, 1985, an explosion shook the village of Neville, Saskatchewan. Cpl Donna Zawislak is currently investigating the disappearance of Susan Dawson.
The Pontex RCMP were called to Neville, Saskatchewan for an explosion that occurred at one of the residences. Upon arrival, they found that a house had been demolished, and it was believed that someone still was inside that residence. Being that it is a small town, everybody came out to look around to see what was going on and saw that there's some damage done at the residence of Terry Murphy. The main source of the explosion came from the basement of the house. As they were sifting through the debris, they found that there were actually human remains inside the house. Some of the evidence found at the scene, they determined it to be the homeowner, Terry Murphy, that was in the house. Because the community was so small, everyone knew that Terry also had a housekeeper that lived with him. Her name was Susan Dawson. Susan was new to the community of Neville. Susan came from Winnipeg. She had come here recently and was working for Terry as a housekeeper. She also loved animals, and according to people from the community, Terry liked animals too, and he helped out with veterinarian issues, like with the cattle and horses and stuff like that, and that's how Susan kind of got involved. And because she didn't know anybody here, she also agreed to be his housekeeper and live at his residence. They also knew Susan had lived there and made attempts trying to locate her within that house to see if, she was, buried inside the rubble. They step by step went through each room, removing debris, looking around, and they found no evidence that Susan was in the house. Believing that Susan wasn't there, the question was, where was Susan?
Of significance in this case is that Terry Murphy was the target of an investigation by Saskatchewan conservation officers and was charged with various wildlife infractions.
According to people close to him, Terry was upset and spoke about rigging up a vehicle with some dynamite and having it set up just to get back at those conservation officers. A few days prior to the explosion, Terry Murphy had rented a blue 1985 Buick car from a rental company in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. The police found this vehicle parked in Terry's yard when they attended the explosion scene. During the scene examination, investigators located a bullet hole through the trunk lid. It was learned that the rental car had been only driven a few hundred kilometers. Investigators are unable to explain whether the bullet hole in the trunk of the vehicle or the amount of kilometers on the car had anything to do with the disappearance of Susan Dawson, who was Terry Murphy's housekeeper.
The community of Neville knew that Susan Dawson lived with Terry Murphy. She was nowhere to be found.
After further speaking with the family, they found out that they'd last talked to Susan on 2 days before she was last seen, and she had phoned home and said that everything was fine. She wasn't in Winnipeg, she wasn't here locally, she didn't know a lot of people, so they started spreading the word. They went around to the residences in the community. Searches were done on foot with the RCMP and by volunteers, and again, those searches resulted in nothing.
Susan's personal vehicle was found parked at the store in Neville, but despite search efforts, Susan and her blue heeler could not be found.
The RCMP Historical Case Unit still considers Susan Dawson a missing person and are continuing to investigate her disappearance. I believe someone knows, yes, what happened to Susan and has some information that could probably shed some light as to what happened to Susan and where she is right now.
Pugo ayak tagita mayo ayak ewanit rutiaska magana witche wagana apugo anige kisiwa kawitsamigod atutiagamiguk.
If you have information on the disappearance of Susan Dawson, please call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477.